Do you think Marilyn Monroe and John F. Kennedy were lovers?
No.
Well, there's a little detail in this video that just might
and
confirm
your
it.
hand, and your voice.
So, no more hesitation. Let's dive into 101 fun facts about every U.S. president with Zarpado. Let's start. 1. John Tyler, the 10th U.S. president, still has a living grandson. Yes, a grandson. Born in 1790, Tyler had a son called Lyon Gardner Tyler in his 60s, who then had kids late in life. So in 2024, Harrison Tyler, whose grandfather was born when George Washington was alive, is still with us. 2. During a state dinner in Japan, George H.W. Bush suddenly collapsed and left an unfortunate liquid souvenir on Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa's legs. Diplomatic relations have survived worse, but yikes. 3. Do you think Marilyn Monroe and JFK were lovers? Their affair was the worst-kept secret, but he still tried to hide it from his wife, Jackie. Years later, a watch Marilyn gifted him surfaced and was auctioned for $120,000. Who gives such an expensive watch to someone other than their close friend with benefits? 4. Talking about lovers in 1992, cabaret singer Jennifer Flowers claimed she had solid proof of a nearly decade-long affair with Bill Clinton. The scandal erupted, but Clinton denied it. 5. Joe Biden is a proud lover of Chevrolet Corvettes. He owns a 1967 Corvette Stingray that he still drives, when the Secret Service allows it. 6. Before becoming president, Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer. He spent years growing peanuts on his family farm in Georgia. 7. The story of John F. Kennedy and the coconut. After surviving a shipwreck in 1943, he carved a distress message on a coconut in the Solomon Islands to save himself and his crew. Years later, he kept the very coconut on his desk. 8. In 1975, Gerald Ford took a tumble while climbing the stairs of Air Force One in Austria. Do you remember this? 9. Warren G. Harding sent steamy love letters to his mistress, Carrie Phillips, including one saying, "I love your thighs when they hold me in paradise." 10. In 2008, President George W. Bush was attacked with a shoe during a press conference in Iraq. Iraqi journalist Muntasir al-Zaidi threw both of his shoes at the president. Talk about throwing shade. 11. Calvin Coolidge, the 30th president, had some pretty unusual pets, including a raccoon named Rebecca. There are even pictures of his wife Grace hanging out with the quirky critter. 12. Did you know the Jeffersonia plant is named after Thomas Jefferson? Botanist Benjamin Smith Barton, knowing Jefferson's love for plants, decided to rename a wildflower in his honor back in 1792. 13. Did you know Woodrow Wilson appears on the $100,000 bill? This rare bill was only used by Federal Reserve banks between 1934 and 1935, making it a collector's dream. 14. Dwight D. Eisenhower, the 34th president, was such a golf fanatic that he was friends with the legendary Arnold Palmer. 15. James Monroe's legacy goes beyond U.S. borders. He has a whole capital named after him. Monrovia, the capital of Liberia, was named in his honor, as Monroe strongly supported the colonization of Liberia and the African Union. 16. In addition to sending erotic letters, Warren Harding had a secret affair with Nan Britton, a much younger woman, when she was 19 and he was 47. 17. James Madison was the smallest president, standing at just 5 feet 4 inches and weighing less than 110 pounds. Like a flea, right? 18. Before becoming president, Gerald Ford was a model and even graced the cover of Cosmopolitan in 1942. 19. Did you know there's a restaurant in Chile named after Bill Clinton? After a surprise visit in 1988, he visited that restaurant and ordered a Diet Coke. The family-owned restaurant San Remo changed its name to La Picada Clinton. The bottle of Coke he drank is kept in a display case. 20. Did you know Donald Trump made a cameo in Home Alone 2? In the movie, young Kevin runs into him at the Plaza Hotel in New York. and Trump directs him to the lobby. Quite the unexpected star appearance. 21. James Buchanan, the 15th president, was the only bachelor president in U.S. history. 22. Remember when Marilyn Monroe sang her famous "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" to JFK at Madison Square Garden on May 19, 1962, for his 45th birthday? 23. Did you know Jimmy Carter became the longest-living U.S. president in history? Born in 1924, he reached an incredible milestone, celebrating his 100th birthday in October 2024, but he died 2 months later. 24. Richard Nixon funded his early political career with poker winnings. While serving in the Navy, he became a skilled 5-card stud poker player. Surprising that poker helped him become president. 25. Thomas Jefferson is believed to have had a relationship with his slave, Sally Hemings, with whom he had several children. DNA tests have confirmed the connection, and it's thought to have started in France, where slavery was illegal. 26. In 2014, at the age of 90, George H.W. Bush, the 41st U.S. president, celebrated his birthday by skydiving. Talk about an epic way to mark the occasion. 27. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams both died on the same day, July 4th, 1826, exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence. 28. Abraham Lincoln holds a patent. He's the only president to have one for a device meant to lift ships stranded in shallow waters, though it was never actually made. 29. Bill Clinton was a professional saxophonist before becoming president. He was so talented that he even played on the Arsenio Hall show in 1992 while campaigning. 30. Are you curious about where President Roosevelt used to vacation? Franklin D. Roosevelt frequently visited Warm Springs, Georgia, where he swam in the hot springs to ease the effects of polio. 31. One of the most surprising images of Theodore Roosevelt is when he rode a horse through the Rocky Mountains during his time as president. 32. John Tyler, the 10th president of the U.S., holds the record for having the most children of any president. He had a total of 15 kids with 2 different wives. 33. Gerald Ford's old football jersey from his time playing at the University of Michigan is kept at their museum. He wore number 48. 34. Did you know that Antigua and Barbuda renamed their highest peak? Boggy Peak became Mount Obama from 2009 to 2016 in honor of the 44th U.S. President, Barack Obama. 35. One of Obama's most relaxed moments came in 2009 when he played basketball at the White House with his team, and the media caught him having a blast. Wondering what team he supported? The Chicago Bulls, of course. 36. William Henry Harrison gave a nearly 2-hour inaugural speech in a snowstorm, catching pneumonia and dying just 1 month into his presidency. Talk about a short-lived term. 37. Jimmy Carter was the first U.S. presidential candidate to give an interview to Playboy magazine. One of the most shocking moments came when he admitted, "I've committed adultery in my heart many times." 38. Kennedy was a huge fan of cigars, so he stocked up on 1,200 cigars to keep a reserve. He placed the order on February 7, 1961, just 1 day before the embargo was imposed. 39. William Howard Taft was the heaviest U.S. president, weighing in at 353 pounds when he took office in 1909. He literally carried the weight of the presidency on his shoulders. 40. The S in Harry S. Truman's name doesn't stand for anything specific. It was a tribute to his grandfathers, Ship and Soul, but Truman never had a full second name. 41. George H.W. Bush and his wife Barbara hold the record for the longest married presidential couple, celebrating an incredible 73 years of marriage. 42. In 1806, Andrew Jackson killed a man in a duel over an honor issue involving his wife, Rachel. A dramatic moment in the life of the future president. 43. In 1973, Pelé expressed his willingness to collaborate with then U.S. President Richard Nixon to improve the controversial relationship between Washington and Latin America, according to an unreleased recording transcribed by local media. 44. As we know, Ronald Reagan was an actor before becoming president. His final movie role was in The Killers, released in 1964. Based on an Ernest Hemingway story, it was his only villain role and also the first made-for-TV movie. 45. In 1901, Theodore Roosevelt officially named the presidential residence the White House. Before that, it didn't have a formal name. 46. Grover Cleveland was the only president to marry in the White House. He wed Frances Folsom, 27 years his junior, whom he had known since she was a child and had been her legal guardian before they fell in love. 47. Woodrow Wilson was the first president whose political decisions were influenced by his wife, Edith Wilson. After he suffered a stroke, she became a de facto president during his final years in office. 48. George Washington didn't have wooden teeth. They were made of ivory. Contrary to the popular myth, his dentures were crafted from materials like ivory, gold, and human teeth. 49. John Quincy Adams was the first son of a president to also become president from 1825 to 1829. His father, John Adams, served as the second president of the U.S. from 1797 to 1801, a true presidential legacy. 51. Franklin D. Roosevelt was the first president to appear on television. He made his TV debut on April 30th, 1939, during the opening ceremony of the New York World's Fair. 52. Ulysses S. Grant was the only president to be arrested, and it happened in 1872 for speeding in a carriage. 53. In 1972, Richard Nixon made history as the first U.S. president to visit the People's Republic of China, opening a new chapter in diplomatic relations between the two nations. 54. U.S. presidents are so privileged that they even have their own beer made at the White House. The Obamas loved craft beer so much they created the White House Honey Ale, made with honey from the presidential garden under the First Lady's supervision. 55. Herbert Hoover had an unusual skill among presidents. He spoke Mandarin fluently, a talent he developed during his time in China as a mining engineer before becoming president. 56. Kennedy had ponies named Macaroni and Tex. Macaroni, a 10-year-old part Shetland gelding, was given to young Caroline Kennedy as a gift from Lyndon B. Johnson. 57. Before becoming president, Bush was a co-owner of the Texas Rangers, a Major League Baseball team. He bought a stake in the team in 1989 and sold it in 1998 for a substantial profit. 58. Did you know that Martin Van Buren was the only U.S. president whose first language wasn't English? He spoke Dutch as his native language. 59. Reagan also holds the distinction of being the candidate who received the most votes, winning in 49 out of 50 states. He only lost in Minnesota. 60. Theodore Roosevelt was the first president to travel abroad during his presidency. In 1906, he visited the Panama Canal, marking a historic moment in U.S. foreign relations. 61. John F. Kennedy was the first Catholic president of the United States. Protestants, particularly Episcopalians and Presbyterians, had been the dominant religious groups among U.S. presidents up until then. 62. Did you know that President Lyndon B. Johnson gifted Martin Luther King the pen he used to sign the Voting Rights Act into law, a powerful symbol of their shared fight for civil rights? 63. James Buchanan never married, so his niece, Harriet Lane, assumed the role of hostess at the White House during his presidency. 64. Did you know that George H.W. Bush was a successful businessman before entering politics? He founded the Bush Overbay Oil Development Company in 1951 and co-founded Zarpado Corporation in 1953. 65. At 6.4 inches, Abraham Lincoln holds the title of the tallest U.S. president. 66. Did you know that Harry S. Truman was the only president of the 20th century or later without a college degree? He enrolled at Spalding's Commercial College to study business, but dropped out after just one semester. 67. Although John F. Kennedy, 43 years old, is known as the youngest president to assume office, Theodore Roosevelt surpassed him. Roosevelt became president at 42 after the assassination of William McKinley in 1901, making him the youngest president in U.S. history. 68. Abraham Lincoln was the first president from the Republican Party, serving from 1861 to 1865. And Democrat, the first was Andrew Jackson, who was the 7th president and served from 1829 to 1837. 69. Did you know that Virginia has produced the most U.S. presidents? Famous figures like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were born there, making it a key state in American presidential history. 70. George Washington, in addition to being a great leader, was also a whiskey producer. He had a distillery on his Mount Vernon estate where he made whiskey, and today you can visit the site. 71. Did you know that one U.S. president served in the two most important wars in history? Dwight D. Eisenhower served in both World War I and World War II, playing a significant role in shaping the outcome of the latter as Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe. 72. Franklin Pierce, the 14th president, is known for having a life filled with personal tragedies. His son, Benny, tragically died at the age of 11 in a railroad accident just before Pierce assumed the presidency. 73. Did you know that one president was born on the 4th of July? Calvin Coolidge was born on July 4th, 1872, in Plymouth Notch, Vermont, making him the only U.S. president born on Independence Day. 74. Jack Schlossberg is the only grandson of John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy. He is the son of Caroline Kennedy, the former U.S. ambassador to Japan, and exhibition designer Edwin Schlossberg. 75. Did you know that Jimmy Carter ran marathons? He was the only sitting president to compete in a road race, though he famously suffered exhaustion and failed to finish. 76. Andrew Jackson, the 7th president, survived an assassination attempt in 1835 when Richard Lawrence fired 2 pistols at him at point-blank range, and both misfired. 77. George Washington never lived in the White House. It wasn't finished yet. He resided in Philadelphia while the White House was completed in 1800 under John Adams. 78. Did you know that Obama has an Oscar? While he does, he also won a Grammy in 2008 for the audiobook version of his memoir, Dreams from My Father. 79. John F. Kennedy is famous not only for his presidency, but also for his rumored extramarital affairs. It's said he had relationships with Marilyn Monroe, Audrey Hepburn, Jane Mansfield, and many others, including White House staffers. 80. President Theodore Roosevelt was not only a leader, but also a fighter. He practiced boxing, judo, and even jiu-jitsu, training in the latter to shed 20 pounds before the election. 81. Former President George H.W. Bush made headlines when, after shaking hands with a Haitian man, he discreetly wiped his hand on his pants. 82. Abraham Lincoln was a licensed bartender. He co-owned a saloon called Berry and Lincoln in Springfield, Illinois, where he served drinks alongside his political career. 83. Check out these wild coincidences between Kennedy and Lincoln. Both were elected president in the 60s. Both lost their party's vice presidential nomination in 1956. And, here's the kicker, both were shot in the head on a Friday. 84. On May 22, 1972, Richard Nixon became the first U.S. president to visit Moscow, and only the 2nd president after Franklin D. Roosevelt to visit the Soviet Union. 85. Theodore Roosevelt was the definition of tough. During a 1912 campaign speech in Milwaukee, he was shot in the chest. But instead of panicking, he finished his 90-minute speech before seeking medical attention. 86. Obama took on a fun challenge when he appeared on an episode of Mythbusters. He joined the hosts to test the ancient myth about Archimedes using solar mirrors to burn an entire fleet of ships. 87. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams once took a trip to Stratford-upon-Avon to visit the birthplace of Shakespeare. 88. In 1921, Theodore Roosevelt was struck by an illness, later diagnosed as polio, that left him permanently paralyzed from the waist down. 89. Grover Cleveland, during his first term, married Frances Folsom, the daughter of his former law partner in the White House. He was 49, she was 21, and he had known her since she was a baby. 90. During the Watergate crisis, Richard Nixon was recorded multiple times defending his actions and ultimately delivering his resignation speech live on August 9, 1974. It was the first time a U.S. president resigned live in front of the nation. 91. The iconic teddy bear got its name thanks to Theodore Roosevelt. While on a hunting trip, he refused to shoot a cute little bear cub, and the story of his compassion sparked the creation of the beloved stuffed animal. 92. Did you know that Abraham Lincoln never left the U.S. during his presidency? Lincoln had limited experience in foreign policy and planned to rely on his Secretary of State, William H. Seward, to handle foreign relations. 93. Andrew Jackson and Donald Trump share a unique connection in that both were known for being outsiders with little political experience before becoming president. 94. Bill Clinton was the first president to visit North Korea in 2009, meeting with leader Kim Jong-il to negotiate the release of 2 U.S. journalists. 95. Franklin D. Roosevelt served 4 terms in office, making him the longest-serving president in U.S. 96. Did you know Woodrow Wilson was the only U.S. president to earn a Ph.D.? He received his Doctor of Philosophy in the History of Government from Johns Hopkins University in 1885, making him the most highly educated president in history. 97. John Tyler, the 10th president, was the first to marry while in office. He married Julia Gardner, and they had a large family. Tyler was 54, and his wife was just 24 at the time. 98. Barack Obama rode in a light blue Chevrolet Corvette in his younger years. 99. Before becoming president, Lincoln was known for his wrestling skills. He was a dominant figure in the Illinois wrestling circuit, winning over 300 matches and losing only one. 100. George H.W. Bush celebrated his 75th, 80th, and 85th birthdays by skydiving, defying the typical expectations of someone his age. His first jump was in 1997 at the age of 72, and it became a regular event. 101. After the British burned down the U.S. Capitol during the War of 1812, Thomas Jefferson sold his personal library of over 6,000 books to the Library of Congress. And that's a wrap on 101 fun and amazing facts about U.S. presidents. Which one surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next one of Zarpado.